an anti-interesting event.
The focus on ridicule.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. This is viewer and listener supported programming. People watching on Twitch, you know the drill on Twitch's monetization. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, just go to our website, echoplexmedia.com, and click the support link at the top of the website. I'm producer Dave, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Plex Dave.
And I am Sylph. You can find me also on Blue Sky at HParron with a dot in between the second R and the I. hpair.in.
Oh, you should get that. You should get that URL.
I have it. That's how I got the Blue Sky thing. It's not the like whatever dot Blue Sky.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I haven't.
Yeah.
I haven't gone through and done that for the Echoplex Media account, and I probably never will because I don't give a fuck. I have like the day is too short, and I have too much other meaningless nonsense to do during the course of the day.
Yeah, I'm also not wearing my pink beanie today.
I know,
letting my hair flow.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So we're gonna kick it a little old school for IDT this evening. Not only do we have the world's humblest man, fucking 19 years in a row, or however many it is, it's him on the Brian Keating show, and both of them have been denied the Nobel Prize. So you know, it is what it is. This is going to be like hubris and personal grievance episode. Probably 25 for us of these two.
We're talking about UAPs, the Galileo project, a recent.
Whoa, what's going on? What is wrong with everyone's camera?
Avi's had out about.
They're just sitting super close. We should do that.
Telescopes. But we're also talking about academia, Doge, and what I've been really troubled with, Eric, and I've been dying. I just miss you so much, but I've been dying to get your thoughts on this. We're surrounded by people in the government that are claiming that AI is science, that crypto is science. We have advisors to the president of the United States that are basically unqualified to discuss science in the extreme. And in some cases, I'm thinking of David Sachs, openly express, almost derision for science, eggheads.
Yeah, but that's Eric's homie.
And so forth, like Avi, like me, and like you. How is this going to affect us in our cultural milieu? I mean,
but doesn't Eric do that constantly?
So he's saying that like AI and crypto aren't science, which, fine, you could say that, but they're part of computer science.
Sure.
Does he not think that computer science is science?
Well, that's a good question. I think I don't know what, this is going to be weird because I think Eric's probably not going to be too happy that Mr. Brian over there is talking shit on some of his venture capital friends.
A lot of good things going on with Doge and everything else. I don't think the way they're treating science is right. What do you think about that?
It's a very difficult time because, to be honest with you, as a guy who was in Silicon Valley for a while, the anti-science stuff didn't really come out until Fauci, in my opinion.
What?
So that in general, tech was pro-science, and somehow in the embittering fight over whether we can discuss COVID origins or whether that's above our.
There's no embitter, like you guys have been talking about it forever. Like you won't shut up about it. We've been talking about the fucking lab leak forever.
Racists.
Yep.
To even wonder whether or not it might be the case that this came out of the lab. That was a very low moment where somebody induced, I think, 77 Nobel laureates to come out on behalf of the EcoHealth Alliance. So you have to first of all realize that whatever the anti-science aspect of this is very recent and relatively shallow. But what you're getting hit with is what I would call a universal discount factor. For example, if you're a
what the
hedge fund
fuck
allocator,
what does he mean a universal discount factor? Is it just like a Diners Club card or what?
The UDF, of course. You've never heard of it?
It's a UDF. Eric's rich as fuck and probably has a Diners Club card.
you're so used to being lied to that you decide that you're going to discount by 25% everyone's projections across the board. That's a typical strategy that you'll see where you realize you're being unfair to some people, but because of the level of nonsense, there are these global discount factors. So I think one thing that's happening is that science is getting hit with the global discount factor. Another thing that's happening is we haven't minted any great spokespeople for science, particularly.
Well, certainly not. Fucking, if it's supposed to be you, what do you mean minted any great spokespeople for science? Like, I don't know. Like, there are plenty of perfectly good science communicators, but it's only once in a while that somebody like Bill Nye comes along, and to some extent Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they like break through from science communication into the mainstream. But I don't think he's like even talking about certainly not Bill Nye. Bill Nye woke as fuck. So he's not talking about Bill Nye. Bill Nye's cool as shit, man.
Yeah. I think he's sad that they didn't come out of tech,
maybe.
which it's like, you know, tech and science intersect, but if you devote your life to tech, the chances that you would also make a great scientist just by happenstance are pretty small.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's worried about them not coming out of tech. I think I don't even know. We're going to see what he has to say about this, because what does he mean we haven't minted any great science communicators? I'm curious.
People, I would say 60 and younger, so that there's no one to defend it. We don't have a clear understanding of the tacit relationships that were enshrined in Vannevar Bush's Endless Frontier Compact between the federal government and the universities. So we are ahistorical. We don't realize what built the golden goose that laid all those eggs.
By the way, Eric, I should say that
With the balls of this guy, I don't even know who he is. He just interrupted Eric. He's never getting on Brian's show again. Eric probably was rage tweeting about this later.
interacted with the transition team exactly on this subject, but they didn't listen.
The question is,
I like how Brian Keating is so close to the camera that his face is out of focus, but his ears are perfectly in focus.
That's on purpose. It's a look.
Lago regularly a research scientist. And I mean that very specifically. Tech sounds like science,
Right.
but one of the problems that we're having, I think, is that you're seeing the return of an old trope. And the old trope is that scientists are welfare queens in white lab coats. And you're seeing this beginning with Sabina's increasingly aggressive stance towards funding, where once Sabina was sort of a marginal.
That's funny because like Sabina is awful. Like, don't listen to her opinions on science.
She did that one dancing song
But-
about Eric that was funny, but other than that, yeah, she's garbage.
Yep.
That dance was very funny.
Yep.
And it was like sort of like deprecating and shit. Everything that Eric could never be, and now she's like just trying to be Eric.
Yep.
Unfairly, estimation, she's now a major channel and one of the principal communicators of science. So I think that in part, a lot is going on, but scientists have not learned to make any argument that is powerful to the group that is now in charge. And that group increasingly thinks that the market is everything. If you can't make it in the market, you're nothing. It often
That's so weird for a venture capitalist to be saying, Eric, how did you afford that fucking $7,000 painting behind you? Like, I don't know, $8,000. How much do you think that fucking piece of art was behind him? Like,
Too much.
does not really
I
distinguish
hope whoever installed the recessed lighting in his ceiling ripped him off.
in science, doesn't distinguish between public health and science. And to be quite honest, there is a small critique headed our way that we need to be listening to, and we're going to be charged for an enormous critique.
Part of the problem is the academic community that in the past, before this time, had a sense of superiority relative to the public, did not really communicate the way science is done, which is full of uncertainty. So you have to be frank about it. You don't want to just sound as if you are reliable, to pretend that you're the adult in the room, because, as an adult, I have 2 daughters. Very often, if you were to tell them the truth, they would not necessarily follow what you tell them. And if you want them to follow what you tell them,
They're using that weird AI tool to fucking edit out the pauses and stuff, and it like really ruins like the way that the show. I mean, the show is there's everything about it is making me uncomfortable anyway.
Yep.
But the way that it's like cut up, obviously like by a computer just to get rid of the dead spaces or whatever, it's fucking kind of unsettling. Not as unsettling as the guy on the left looks kind of like a regular guy actually.
you have to distort what you know. And so that's what politicians often do, but scientists should be frank. And when we have press conferences and we lecture to the public as if that's the truth, it's an inappropriate portrayal of science. Science is work in progress, and there are mistakes. Brian knows of a very famous press conference that ended up being a mistake. And so my point is that, we should communicate about science being a learning experience and trying to make the best out of the evidence we have and admit when it's uncertain. And that, partly was the issue with Fauci and COVID.
What do you think, Eric, is the natural outgrowth of this interest?
So that guy just conflated the science and like public health. Public health should be informed by science, but like public health communication isn't science.
Mhm.
And so I hate when they do that. It drives me nuts.
The simultaneously incredibly high level of interest and gaslighting, that we're undergoing. You pointed this out back in December with the New Jersey drones. Avi talked about
Is it possible to gaslight Eric?
And I wonder, do you think if Avi transplanted or duplicated the Galileo project, its sensors, its sonic listening devices, multi-messenger tools, if that would convince the public that either the government's telling us the truth? In other words, is there a level of scientific rigor that can ever convince the government that the population has been burned so many times that actually we should trust science again?
I have a dangerous answer to that, which is the public right now is most interested in the tiny number of people who've gone against the grain. And I would say that.
Oh, shut the fuck up. The public is interested in Taylor Swift. Like,
Yeah.
what's that lady's name that was on all the different police procedurals? You know who they love is Mariska Hargitay. It's not Haggerty, it's Hargitay or something. They like her. If you know what else they'd be interested in, maybe I don't know. Was Jamiroquai coming out with another album? Like the public would be interested in these things. They're not interested in. He means himself, by the way, right? Then when he says that the public is interested in the few scientists that went against the grain, he means himself.
Yep.
But every time he like fires up a space to like interact with his fans, he ends up leaving it because he's mad because somebody asked a question he doesn't like.
And to a certain extent, like he is, I don't want to say right, but like he has a point that a certain percentage of the population, a few million people, do actually really care about like the anti-science people, the people who shit on science. but it's not because they're right.
And
it's because they're charismatic.
And the other thing is, like, Eric doesn't do any science. So he's like not like a scientist, right? He's a he used to be a talk show host, but I guess he couldn't sue Sam Cedar or something. So now he's not a talk show host. I'm not sure that he works for Peter Thiel anymore. So I don't know what he does.
Does podcasts, I guess?
Goes on people's podcasts. I don't know. If he took the bag and retired, good for him, I suppose.
Than his censors. So Avi's willingness to talk about UAP and to talk about aliens and extraterrestrials strikes normal people.
Was that a blob of solder that they labeled alien tech?
I think so. I hope so.
Open-mindedness that they expect of science. So Avi...
Sorry, they didn't label it alien tech. They labeled it alien tech?
But with some credibility to this new group.
Just asking questions.
Convince people who believe in, quote, the science, the Fauci fan club, with peer...
Is anybody even still a fan of fucking Anthony Fauci? Like, I guess he did the best job he could, but I don't think about him except on Wednesday, actually. And sometimes Friday, because the people on Friday hate him too. The piss drinkers don't like him either.
I think Eric is just very hung up on him still.
Papers. But how are you going to convince people who are aware of national security concerns, in fact, adulterating science? You're going to look to people who stood up and said something as iconoclasts, whether that's Jordan Peterson or Sabina Hassenfelder or Avi or you.
Wait, but no, you're fucking no, dude. We like an iconoclast. Like, it's a term we usually apply to somebody after they're dead. We don't just call all the people that agree with us. Everybody that agrees with me is an iconoclast. It's like, well, that's just weird. That's just weird, isn't it?
Or whoever. It's a relatively smaller group. And the key point is, if Avi were saying something...
I think Eric might just be sad that he has had essentially zero impact on humanity. And he will be largely forgotten.
And that the Trump administration didn't call him. I think he's big mad that he's not, like, invited to the fucking party. Once, though, he said that Ivanka was only an 8.5, and it's just that now, no, sorry, not invited anywhere.
Say a lot more than if somebody who is inclined to poo-poo.
I can't even say that Eric has had a largely negative impact on humanity. He's just had, like, roughly zero impact on humanity
in life beyond our solar system. So
I don't know. He worked for Peter Thiel, dude.
Okay.
Kind of
Will he be remembered for that?
No, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't had a negative impact on society.
Okay, fair enough.
The ghoul behind the curtain is still a ghoul.
If it wasn't him, though, it would have been someone else. And,
life beyond our
in that sense, it wasn't really his impact. He was just helping someone else negatively impact humanity.
I think that's kind of the key issue.
If you look at the history of why science became important to politics, it really started in the US with the Manhattan Project, because politicians realized here is a weapon that can win wars. And obviously, what it did to Japan was to change the course of the confrontation.
I'm sorry, is this fuck you. This is not the first time the government ever cared about science. Otherwise, why did they fucking buy and build fucking airplanes? You could also blow somebody up with a fucking airplane and a rifle. Like, all these things are like downstream from like scientific, like at least scientific curiosity, even if not like directly the scientific method,
Yeah, I was going to say lots of sciences predated like subatomic sciences. The germ theory predates the nuclear bomb.
Oh, but 50-50 on whether or not Eric still buys into the germ theory.
But like, yeah, guns were a product of science. Like, that's chemistry.
Yep. Like, this is so crazy. This is so weird. This isn't the first time the government cared about science. This is just like, they're all like, it's like, this is I think these people all like worship their fathers or their grandfather, right? Because their grandfather was alive or their father was alive during World War II, and so they like worship that person, and that was the best time because like blah 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 blah. I really think that's what's going on here.
And they realize, okay, we should probably have the National Science Foundation to support fundamental science because it gives us potentially advantage relative to adversarial countries. And it has a geopolitical impact. But over the decades, some scientists started worrying about, extra dimensions, about things that are not really useful for society. And then
Fucking okay.
So I mean, sure.
Just the average scientist they were doing their science work, and now they're just fucking sitting there on a LSD worrying about extra dimensions. Actually, should MK
I think
Ultra
he's talking
them.
specifically about string theory.
Oh, yeah, that's right. These people fucking hate string theory for what appears to be no reason. But also,
like,
Michio
sure,
Kaku is into string theory, and we watched Michio Kaku, and he's just as fucking cuckoo birds as these guys.
You could say that like string theory was, quote, a waste of time or whatever, or a waste of resources. But like, how would you know that unless you did the science? Someone might have said back when germ theory was just a hypothesis, like, no, this is a waste of time. We shouldn't look into what causes diseases. Obviously, it's bad air.
And like, there's obviously like, I don't know anything about string theory, but it stands to reason that while people were doing work around string theory, that they figured some other shit out. Like there are like off to the right and to the left or whatever effects and like things that you can learn about the world, even if that's not the specific thing you're looking into. So like, I don't know.
Lots of elegant new mathematics.
Eric should love that.
Is largely what came out of string theory. But again, like we wouldn't have known whether or not we would have like, a tangible product to that line of, that endeavor without doing it. So, to a certain extent, you kind of have to try everything. Not everything. I mean, obviously there are things that are just not even feasible to be correct. Like, what's that thing? Homeopathy.
Oh, people be trying
we don't
it anyway.
need to study homeopathy. We did, but we don't need to. We didn't need to before, and we don't need to now.
And I mean, we can't try everything either, because like, how do you even know what everything is?
Yeah.
This is amazing. I love this. This is great. So they were worried about extra dimensions, but like the other thing is like the way they talk about science is basically just physics, right? They don't think they never like was chemistry off thinking about other dimensions. What about biology? Were they off thinking about other dimensions? Like they only ever want to talk about physics.
Yep.
Somebody in chat said Brian is giving a look. No, Brian just looks like that.
as it says to, what do you make of the present day academia? Is that really helpful to society? And then, of course, the issues of health and so on. So here is an example of another Manhattan Project moment. Suppose the asteroid 2024 YR1 were to strike the Earth. So we would find...
Oh, I'm rooting for it. How big is it?
It would actually collide with Earth within 7 years. Okay? Then you would find kids aspiring to become scientists, because suddenly society will be worried about the implications. You could calculate which regions would be affected by the impact and how many people may die if they stay there, and real estate value will go down in those regions. People
real estate value, friend. I love that. That reminds me of the fucking when Ben Shapiro like told people that live on the coast to sell their house because of fucking the sea rise and H bomber guy was like, sell them to who, Ben? Aquaman? This guy's like, the real estate value is going to plummet because we think an asteroid is going to hit your house. Get the fuck out of here, dude. Honey, there goes the neighborhood. Remember when Grandpa was mad that the blacks moved in down the street? Well, there's a fucking asteroid coming now. So Grandpa was a little racist, actually. The asteroid is coming. Honey, who do we sell the house to?
Martians?
Right? That's such a crazy. It just immediately just conjured that up to me. It's like property value goes down because the asteroid hits your house. Oh,
What's the name of the blue guy from Watchmen? That
You're asking
basically
the
has
wrong
God
person.
powers.
you're asking the wrong person.
Dr. Manhattan, I think. Sell it to him.
And NASA will be energized to create a DART-like spacecraft that will collide with the object, deflect it, and then they will become the heroes, saving humanity. And that's a moment that can bring science back to the focus. And astronomers, frankly, would have the highest societal status in that scenario. We can wait.
No, these people live in this world. Like oh my God. No, they're not going to have the highest societal status because they fucking figured out how to make the asteroid not hit the Earth. The fucking people are too selfish to give a fuck about that. And I mean selfish in a weird way, right? Because it's kind of selfish maybe not to want the asteroid to hit the Earth. But that's not how any of this works. Like, this is so weird.
Yeah, all the people who wouldn't have been affected by the asteroid will be like, fuck those guys. I don't
Right,
care.
I was actually hoping the asteroid hit someone else.
I was going to invest in those properties.
Right. It's like the shock doctrine, but with a fucking asteroid.
Another approach is basically to tell politicians that science is better than politics.
Isn't AI that moment, Eric? I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
The basic point is we made you safe, we made you strong, we made you rich. What is your effing problem? Period. The end. Okay.
What?
We meaning scientists.
Huh?
Well, let's be more specific. Physics.
Physicist, of course. Eric, who has never actually been a working physicist ever at all. He has a degree in physics, which is fine. It's a fine thing to get a degree in. Also has a degree in mathematics. May have been possibly using the mathematics degree in some way to rip people off as a venture capitalist. But what do you mean Eric? You just got a degree in something. You're not a physicist. It's totally okay to get a degree in physics and then go do something else. Like, no fucking problem. But then don't run around the world acting like you're the world's greatest physicist because you haven't done any physics.
What are you talking about? He completely revolutionized physics. Just no one takes him seriously
He
because
revolutionized.
of academia.
He revolutionized Poindexter's coming up with pretty funny insults, I bet, is what he revolutionized. Coming up with insults that we don't understand, that are funny as shit to the other Poindexters. That's what I bet he revolutionized, is jokes in the physics community.
Physics adjacent in this conversation as a mathematician. But basically, the key point is whether it was inventing molecular biology, putting you in instantaneous communication, inventing the semiconductor, the World Wide Web, give me a break. This stuff.
Physics, the World Wide Web was fucking software engineers and computer scientists, not physicists.
Well, it was physicists, but the Tim Berners-Lee worked at CERN when he invented the World Wide Web.
Right,
But,
but it wasn't. It was computer science. It was,
yes, but in the goal of advancing physics.
Oh, well, that's all right. Cool. Well, then I guess it was physics. Eric, like this is that's incorrect. Like somebody else would have come up with something similar.
Yes. Yeah, arguably someone else did come up with it. It's just the World Wide Web is the one that caught on.
Out of nowhere. It's not all based on startups. Every scientist should learn that they produce a public good, which is both inexhaustible and inexcludable if done correctly. And the key question is, why do we see ourselves incorrectly? We are this incredibly dangerous ninja priesthood.
Oh, shut the fuck up. There's nothing dangerous about you. Get the fuck out of here. You're not like a ninja.
Incredibly dangerous ninja priesthood. Is that what he said?
Eric he wouldn't make an incredibly dangerous ninja, but boy howdy, I bet he'd have made a good preacher, right?
Yeah.
He'd have made a good preacher for sure. Like,
And by good, you mean atrocious.
I don't know. He can talk for a long time and tell you what's true or whatever, whether or not it's true. Eric, like a ninja.
Good in the sense of a good cult leader.
Eric Ninja's like it was like they're basically like spies and assassins. Eric would be so bad at that because he'd just tell everybody that he's a spy and an assassin, and then
I'm actually the world's best spy. I
like,
completely reinvented spying. I came up with this new spying theory. Let me show you my math.
right, and then but he tells it to the person he's spying on, and then they kill him.
Why did you shoot me? I'm trying to explain spying to you.
Holy shit, man. Burn notice, but it's Eric Weinstein.
And pretending that we are, I don't know, that science is interesting and it's good for you. And it makes it sound like some sort of, we're trying to sell oatmeal or something. I'm not quite sure.
Or pandering for our existence.
Well, which is absurd. The basic point is you have the world's greatest deal, which is that you keep us protected and able to work on things that we want to work on. And when you want to call on us, we're there. And when we start bad mouthing our own country, we are breaking the deal. When they start saying, what is
Nobody's ever called on Eric to do physics, though.
I don't think anyone calls on him to do anything. I wonder if Brett and Heather even still invite him over for Thanksgiving. I mean, I don't like Brett and Heather, but that doesn't mean that Eric isn't more annoying than them.
I mean, like you said, he's talking about physics as if he's like this integral part of the physics community, and he's not. He's a fucking outsider.
And that's fine.
Like
I'm an outsider of the physics community too.
He is a part of the physics community in the same way that like you and I are a part of like the most popular podcast group.
Right. It's
like we participate, but we're not in the club.
Right.
Or, go get real jobs. They are breaking the deal. And I'm watching.
Actually, I think we're more a part of that club than Eric is part of the physics club.
Right. And we're more of the part of that club than Eric is part of that club because he shut down his podcast because he couldn't get Sam Cedar to stop making fun of him. That's literally where this clip comes from.
The focus on ridicule.
You don't remember what Vannevar Bush was trying to do, saying we won't do this work in national labs, we'll do it in universities. Maybe the idea is that it's too dangerous to do physics in an open environment. We took out 2 Japanese cities with a little bit of physics. Imagine what we could do if we really started pushing things. I mean,
imagine how many more cities do you need to take out?
He said a little bit of physics.
I mean, it was kind of a lot of physics, but it was also like there was like material science. All kinds of stuff went into it, actually. Chemistry.
It was years of physics.
Like one might say
of the highest level physics research
one
at
might
the
say
time.
One might say the entire history of humanity's worth of physics.
Yeah.
To the extent that there was, well, whatever. I don't want to get into that.
I think what people need to realize is science isn't always interesting. Sometimes it's dull as church. Sometimes it's the most riveting thing on the planet. It's not always successful. Sometimes it changes everything. Oftentimes it lags. But the key point is it is absolutely consequential. That the cavalier way.
You know what? I'm really glad that he didn't stay in academia, honestly. Could you imagine, like, if you had a kid and your kid comes home from university, you're like, how's university? You're like, it's all it's all well and good except for Professor Weinstein. He won't keep.
Maybe he could have. If he had stayed in academia, he probably would have like had to give up a lot of his more out there views, or else he would have been forced out anyway. So I don't know.
He keeps bringing a toilet paper roll, a rubber band, and a fucking sewing needle, and explaining the universe to us. But this is like a 1A class, and I don't know what's happening here. I'm not learning anything in that class, and I'm afraid I'm going to fail it because I think I laughed at him the other day that he saw.
He keeps telling us how wrong the textbook is about everything.
Increasingly, this embittered tech right which is very recent in its origin. I thought these guys were going to be our biggest friends and maybe even our saviors. And in part, lying about things like string theory and lying about things like cures for cancer and lying about peer review and pretending that public health is science when it absolutely, in no uncertain terms, is not, has caused this rift. And so in part, what we have to do is we have to reinvent scientific credibility and institutional credibility to people who don't go to seminars. Now, I was at the Caltech colloquium last week in physics, and I didn't see anybody from the crowd.
So because Eric is not invited to the club, he wants to make his own club, presumably with hookers and blackjack.
Yeah. And he apparently crashed some kind of physics convention. Check this out.
People who don't go to seminars. Now, I was at the Caltech colloquium last week in physics, and I didn't see anybody from the crowd of people that gets asked about science and technology policy. They're never there. They don't even understand the difference between a college and a university.
Maybe they heard you were going there.
The university's chief mission is not teaching. It is research and the mentorship of people who are to become researchers.
Eric, you have dinners.
What is mentorship?
It's when Eric tells you things.
Arguably, one could say that's teaching,
Of people who are to become researchers.
or at least teaching is a part of mentorship.
Research and the mentorship of people who are to become researchers.
Eric, you have dinners with those tech executives. What do you tell them?
I fight alone, my friend. I mean, I'm having one tonight with very prominent people in the tech world. And my
He just means Peter Thiel.
claim is I will almost certainly be the only person defending science. And they will look at me and they will say, you realize you're defending the people who attack you at your core in the physics community.
But that's because you have integrity, Eric, and many scientists don't.
Oh, I don't know about that. Get the fuck out of here. He's not a scientist. They're not attacking him. Like, this is all wrong. They're not attacking him. They are most of them. I bet if you went to a university right now and you just gathered the whole physics department just together and said, raise your hand if you know who Eric Weinstein is, you'd get maybe one person raise their hand and start snickering. Right?
Also, Eric has integrity. Is integrity maybe the name of his dog? That's a way he could have integrity.
This is really weird because he goes to like dinner with all these like venture capitalists. What does he just start talking about science? Like what how does this even come up? They're like, fuck. Okay. All right, Eric, do your little fucking talking about science thing. Get it out of your system so we can all do a bunch of blow and not have to listen to you later.
I think Avi does, and he gets assailed. Maybe not as much as you do, but I think the comment you made about
You've seen plenty of negativity thrown his way. The key point is, do you stand alone? When it comes time, a scientist does not fall back on peer review. They fall back on scientific method, consistency. And the key question is, are you willing and capable of standing alone? Now, the problem...
But what if you're wrong? If like everybody else thinks you're wrong and you're wrong, and then are you capable of a little bit of fucking humility to be like, maybe I'll sit back down.
Nope, you gotta stand alone. Never give up, no matter how disproven your hypothesis is.
And this is so funny because he's just been cosplaying as a physicist for like this whole time that we've been fucking covering him, right?
Yeah. You know what? I think I know why they hate string theorists so much. You know why?
Because they've done a lot of work, even though it's been difficult, and they're
there's
not getting what they want. Maybe.
But also, eventually they realized this isn't going anywhere, and they stopped.
I don't know if that's the case,
something
but
Eric can never do.
I don't know. I didn't know that about string theory, but I'll take your word for it. I just thought it was because in Eric's case, I just thought he hated them because they had worked in physics, just by doing some work.
We need more people in those tech dinners because if it's only one per dinner, if that,
Okay, Eric,
Watch this dude on the left. This is Avi Loeb, by the way. Him go, those people are insufferable, and I'm not going to dinner with Peter Thiel. It would be the funniest fucking thing in the world if he fucking said that. He's like, I do not want to know Mark Andreessen. Don't. You're inviting Curtis Yarvin? Fuck no, I'm not going to dinner with you. Like,
Or maybe we could just not have those dinners.
right. This could have been an email.
join you. I think it's really important that, there was a sense of humility because many of these tech executives went to colleges, and they studied there and they had some respect to the people who taught them, but it was lost because of the interaction that they had later on. So I think that it's really important to restore that.
Probably it's lost because they got rich.
That's probably it. Yeah. I just noticed how
once you're disgustingly wealthy, you tend to not care about other people.
I just noticed how
you've heard
bad
the term money corrupts.
I just noticed how bad Brian Keating's OBS skills are. Like nothing's like symmetrical, like nothing's centered correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Avi's window is like bigger than Brian's window right here.
He doesn't know how to fucking copy transform. Like his OBS game is hell weak, dude.
He also doesn't know how to focus his camera, but I don't know. I guess we'll let that slide.
Maybe he took our advice and got one of these cameras that we have, but he's so fucking close to it that, like you said, his ear is in focus, but his nose isn't.
Yeah.
These tech people being the tech support of the White House and controlling the conversation about AI, it's about natural intelligence, not artificial intelligence that we should.
Isn't there a danger of the same thing happening? I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. This is what happened with Mr. Epstein. But, to replace tech bros by, super successful hedge fund entrepreneur that had connections all around the world. We can't figure out exactly what he did. But Eric, couldn't that lead to the economic incentives that you pointed out, which I agree with? But couldn't that lead to this, very dastardly influence of both non-scientific and maybe immoral or unethical individuals like Epstein?
look, the key issue is when I look at the unethical behavior of our colleagues in trying to destroy
your
What
colleagues
exactly
are
was he
venture
asking there?
capitalists. His colleagues, does he mean venture capitalists? Is that what he means, his colleagues? Like what?
I assume he means physicists, even though physicists aren't his colleagues.
Yeah. Dude, they're not your colleagues, dude. They're not your colleagues, man. I'm sorry.
ideas and the proponents of new ideas. I look at them and I say, would they be more ethical people if we paid them less and tried to starve them, or we paid them properly? They weren't so marginal. And so I have this terrible problem, which is that my argument is you have to pay my enemies more if you really want them to evaluate my work. And this is a typical problem.
Wait, what work? You mean geometric unity?
I'm so confused, right? So wait, his
There's enemies.
enemies. So does he mean physicists?
I think so.
He just called them his colleagues, and now he's calling them his enemies.
They're unethically behaving. So
So if you just paid physicists more, they would take me seriously. Is that his point?
ooh, I don't know. But I'm all for like giving like working scientists a pay bump if we can, sure.
Yeah, I'm for that as well, but I don't think it's going to cause them to take Eric Weinstein seriously.
They're his enemies.
There are perverse financial incentives in science and academia. I'll grant them that point. That doesn't mean that every scientist is out to get Eric Weinstein.
I wish they were.
I think most obviously the reason would be the biggest perverse incentive is to gain yourself notoriety, right? So if Eric were correct, then his work would have been stolen by now and passed off as someone else's work.
Right.
The
what if
way
it was true? What if it's
they
true?
often do with undergraduates, you know?
What if he was right and some fucking like black trans woman from Berkeley stole his work and published it and got all the credit, he would be livid. Oh, he'd be so
I mean, there
pissed.
you go. If he wants to test whether his work is actually valuable, just have someone else submit it and watch them get laughed at.
Police department, where you had an incredibly corrupt police department. New chief came in and said, we have to pay everybody more so that they feel like they have something to lose and that they're valued within the system. So the key problem here is that the Sabina solution is to threaten to disconnect more of these people. And my solution is opposite, which is we've allowed scientists to become the precarious people who have to more or less follow incentives, jump on every NSF initiative, et cetera, et cetera.
He's just describing an employee.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I do agree with him, but I also think that like there are better ways to remove perverse incentives from the system. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad way for sure. You know, pay scientists more, but I don't think that that is going to solve all the problems. I'm not even really sure that that's going to solve any problems other than that a lot of scientists struggle to get by.
By the way, it's not, the physicists are not supposed to be paid chiefly out of NSF. The physicists are supposed to be paid out of the Department of Energy, which is really the Department of Nuclear Weapons.
Sabina very much criticizes the next accelerator. And I think, it's really important to advocate for getting as much data as possible in a way of learning about nature rather than shying away from experimental programs. It's actually the opposite that we want to cultivate, because that's the only path for learning something new, getting as much data, as much evidence. If you think that the axis of having higher energy will reveal new physics, that's what you should invest in. But the one thing that should not be done is suppress many initiatives that go in directions that are not traditional, which is what and my approach to that, my solution to that is, if you don't want to get dirty, don't mud wrestle. So there are all
right, thanks, dude. What the?
These people who invite me for,
I think these three should mud wrestle.
wrestling, and I just declined.
I would pay to not see that.
It took me a while
Brian Keating would dominate.
to learn that, because initially I would respond, but as of now, I just do what I think is the right thing to do and avoid wasting energy on people who just invite the conflict.
Yeah, but the problem that we're having in some of these areas is that we want to be honest about it, and we don't want to pay for our honesty with our lives, our support, and our careers. So right now we have this really important thing that happened that we haven't discussed on this call anyway, which is Mark Andreessen's conversation at the White House that has been replayed numerous times.
Well, I heard him on a podcast also. He was saying destroy all universities and rebuild them.
Eric, you're referring to the fact that he said if you discover something that the government will classify even up to mathematics. Is that right, Eric?
That's right.
So explain that to Avi, because I don't know if Avi heard that particular clip.
What he said was that he was given a courtesy heads up as a billionaire. Do not invest in AI. AI startups will not be allowed to be a thing. We are going to choose a couple of winners. We are going to make them giant corporations and we'll put them in a federal cocoon. And
What?
when Andreessen and Horvitz said back, I don't know how you're going to do this, because that would mean that you'd have to classify mathematics, which is being taught everywhere, and you can't classify math. They said, we took entire segments of theoretical physics offline during the Cold War, and they went dark. Now, the interesting...
I think Mark Andreessen's just lying.
No record of any physicist that I know being told...
The math isn't the hard part about making a nuclear bomb. Like I feel like they're kind of glossing over this. You can figure out how to make a nuclear bomb relatively easy. Lots of people have done it around the world. The problem is the materials and the way they have to be processed is extraordinarily expensive.
And it's not physicists; those are material scientists working on those problems.
Well, both.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There are people there who aren't physicists, so Eric doesn't believe in it anyway. Idiots. Non-physicist idiots.
But I also, with the AI thing, there's a much better reason not to invest in AI, and it's because it's mostly hype.
Right, and it doesn't fucking do anything. Like it'll give you a Garfield with a giant dick or something, but that's about it.
Like AI is really bad at most things that we've tried to make it do. Most, not all, but most.
Yeah, it's great at the Garfield thing.
I've never tested that, but it probably would be.
Physics, and we're going to make them go dark. So the key question here is, if that's true, did the federal government pull off what in corporate consulting is called, management consulting, is called a soft sunset? A soft sunset is one in which you do not alert the people who are being downsized that they are being taken offline. You want the people to think that they are still working on important problems and they don't even realize that they are being phased out. They're being sunsetted.
Oh, it's like that in that show Silicon Valley where they just kept paying people and then they just ended up hanging out on the roof and having a barbecue and getting high, right? It's like that. Except they're just doing it to science.
Yeah.
Eric doesn't know, but that's what they did to him. They're like,
or
we gotta
like,
get rid of this guy somehow.
Like that movie Office Space where one of the characters was fired like years before and for some reason just kept getting a paycheck. And then they fixed the glitch. But didn't tell the guy, so he ended up like in the basement or something.
Mark Andreessen talking about when it came to the White House's comments on theoretical physics? And is our lack of ability to move the Lagrangian of the universe beyond 1973 part of a soft sunset of theoretical physics? Because that's exactly the time when quantum gravity is debuted as a concept. You don't find essentially any mention of quantum gravity before the early 1970s if you look at Google Ngrams. So the key question is, did we get soft sunsetted? Is there in chemistry, you have a concept of an inhibitor, which is something you add to a ongoing reaction to stop the reaction. Imagine that effectively what we had theoretical physicists hitting it out of the park, and then suddenly they became very unsuccessful. At exactly that moment, we start to see the appearance of quantum gravity. And then 10 years later, we see the appearance of string theory.
What does unsuccessful mean in this concept? And what do you mean suddenly? Like, this is all fucking weird. This is all like, it's all like fucking, he's writing like whatever the opposite of fanfic is, it seems like.
So I think what he's saying is like, there hasn't been a completely revolutionary new theory of physics since around 100 years ago. Which, sure, fine. But that doesn't mean that like it's actively being oppressed. It means that discovering a revolutionary theory of physics is actually quite hard.
Right.
And the fact that we discovered two very close in time to each other is marvelous, but it doesn't mean that that's a trend that's going to continue to happen. You know, it doesn't mean like, oh, we discovered relativity, oh, we discovered quantum mechanics. What's the next thing that's going to be discovered, next year?
Right.
Like it might be, a couple hundred years until we discover a revolutionary theory of physics. Or it might happen tomorrow. We don't really know.
Soft sunsetted, and we didn't get the courtesy call that Andreessen and Horvitz did.
What do you think, Avi?
I just heard the person who spoke with Andreessen in the Biden White House, who was asked exactly this question about what they were talking about today in a podcast. We can ask that person what the discussion was about. It was a podcast with Ezra Klein, with the person who was in charge of AI in the White House. During the Biden administration, the meeting was, around April 2024. I think we should approach these people and get more details. Now, the question is, should we push government to reveal what is under wraps? What kind of physics has been hidden? Is it related to UAP? Is it related to new physics that the government knows about and wants to take advantage of in some ways?
Huh?
It would require a very efficient core.
Tell us about the flying saucers.
Yeah, that's all that's going on with this guy on the left here.
in it. So somehow it clicked. It's just hard for me to tell whether the government is competent enough to put a seal on a very important scientific discovery. I don't know what Eric thinks, but
The government is completely incompetent and can't do anything, but also they are this big, well-oiled machine that has been able to stop physics advancements for 50 years.
And just put their thumb on Eric too, somehow, in a very covert way.
belief is the government is not competent enough to do that. But maybe Eric thinks otherwise.
Well, I think that the story, again, you and I have both been tracking it when most of our PhD brethren will not, is roughly speaking that between 1952 and 1970-ish, 71, there was this golden age of general relativity that was largely funded by two people who look like CIA cutouts, Roger Babson and Agnew Bainson. They worked particularly with Bryce DeWitt and Lewis Witten. There was an entire coordinated series of places that were working on gravity for engineering purposes. A lot of this got pushed out into aerospace companies, which is not a natural home for theoretical physics, but in particular, the Glenn L. Martin Company of Baltimore was where Lewis Witten was posted. And I would say that Curtis Wright was where Feynman was probably going in his story, Any Questions, where he's giving physics lectures to aerospace people. So whatever the
Surely you're booking Mr. Feynman where he's in a taxi cab and he tells the driver,
tell me a place. He goes to the Alibi Room in Buffalo, New York. I think that's
Man, this is like they're like writing it's weird. They're writing like a movie about a particular time in physics that they are like decided was like the golden age of physics or whatever. And it just so happens to line up like right with, I think basically when in the 70s when Eric probably started, because I think maybe the 80s he might have started university. I forget how old he is, but it seems like it lines up just so that Eric couldn't fucking make the next great physics fucking discovery because they put the kibosh on the golden age of physics right before he got there. Like that's what it sounds like to
Right
me.
before. Yep. Gosh. If only they hadn't have done that, Eric would be a Nobel Prize winner.
right aerospace.
But Eric, do you think we should add that to the JFK?
Also, do you think this is like tangential to that thing that Peter Thiel keeps saying about how there have been no advancements in science for like 50 years?
I think it's not just, I think it's the same thing.
Despite, look around in like literally any room and you'll see all of the advancements in science from the past 50 years.
Right. No, I don't think it's tangential. I think it's the same thing. Eric and Peter are like friends. It's the same thing. For Eric, it just manifests itself in the area where he thinks that he's being like stepped on or whatever, right? Whereas with Peter Thiel, it's probably more general and he doesn't just talk about physics when he talks about it.
RFK
memo
files that to be released.
If you go back to my appearance on Joe Rogan's program, episode 1945, the year of the Trinity test, coincidentally, you'll see that I've basically been tracking this and that story is now spread. Jesse Michaels has been spreading it. I would say David Kaiser knew about some of the story independently, but more or less, yes, the golden age of general relativity is probably involved with some attempt at something like primitive space-time engineering.
What?
A 1971 Australian intelligence document by a physicist who talks about Dyson, Oppenheimer, DeWitt, a bunch of well-known people to all of us being involved with this. I don't think it was hyper successful, to be entirely honest. Mm-hmm. We know that the 1957 Chapel Hill conference had Feynman coming to it under the assumed name of Mr. Smith. So it's really weird behavior. Herman Bondi talked very clearly about removing the positivity constraints from general relativity. All of these things had not been talked about much in recent years. And my feeling is I'm trying to get people to open the kimono as to where Babson and Bainson actually cutouts for CIA funding. And then you had these two charismatic, mysterious funders who couldn't be traced to the government. And did we move a lot of this stuff into aerospace? Because the one lesson of the Manhattan years, Avi, as you probably know, is that the best way to keep a secret is compartmentalization. Only the white badges knew what was going on at Los Alamos. Everyone else merely had a friend.
He's like kind of all over the place now, unless it's just being edited weird. But I think they're just cutting out the fucking the dead space.
Yeah.
He's like all over the
You mean they're
fucking
cutting
place.
around the dead space?
Talking before you came on.
Everything
about
Eric
AI
says is
and
dead space.
effectively
Oh, it would be way better. I want the parts that they cut out, and I just want to watch that.
how it's sort of training us. And you've talked about what you coined in your traditional portmanteau or some new neologism as your want, Eric.
Hit the Lloyd's, Keating.
Hey, keep it up. We'll have a minion soon over here. Okay. You called something fascinating. I first heard it from you in Florence last May, but you wrote about it as early as 2017. It's called outelligence. And
Outelligence. Oh no.
Concept that Avi might
It's
not
when
be
you're all out of smart. You're outelligence. Like being out to lunch.
familiar with, but effectively we discussed the fact that perhaps AI is training us. And I wonder, what Avi thinks about this idea that you've coined. Maybe you can describe it for those that aren't familiar. This concept of how outelligence perhaps evolves, and to what extent.
I don't think AI is training us as a large language model.
Or whatever you want. How they might be locked in to a physics model that is doomed never to give us the new physics that you and I and Avi crave. So first of all,
What if there is no new physics?
does it have bearing on perhaps solving these problems? Let's go beyond the conspiracy to cover things up and stuff that we've already talked about.
Sure. Artificial outintelligence is something I defined when something without a brain outsmarts something with a brain. So in particular,
So that's just Eric trying to talk to ChatGPT.
For example, Eric talking to literally anything in the universe.
there's an entire clade of orchids called ophrys, which convince male pollinators that they are offering a female looking to mate via a replica from their lowest petal along with the pheromones to prove that she's ready and waiting. So when these male pollinators are duped twice, the plant is able to pollinate without having to pay in terms of energetic nectar.
Why would you make up your own term for that? There's a term for that in evolution. I don't remember what it is. Evolutionary mimicry, I believe, would be the broader term, but there is a term for like when you mimic something to attract something else to come and give you benefit.
Right. It's it's all kinds of plants and a lot of plants do it actually, and like undersea creatures do it as well.
Yeah. Like that already has a name. Why would you make up a new name for that?
Well, I think he's saying outintelligence is that is a version of outintelligence, that isn't the entirety of it. Because outintelligence, again, is something without a brain outsmarting you, which happens to us all the time, actually. You ever had a particularly hard time opening a fucking something? Anything? Ever?
I think it happened to me recently when I was bringing the groceries in. I kept picking up the same thing and trying to put it on the stack that I was holding, and it kept falling off.
Yeah, that's deep. It happens to us all the time. It's outintelligence, but I don't think that's what he means. I think it's usually just us being kind of absent-minded and not paying attention to what we're doing, right? We're not being outsmarted. We're probably just like not thinking about what we're doing. That's definitely not what he's talking about.
How did the plant outsmart the thing with an actual brain? Well, it used its
Evolution.
brain against itself. It said, look, if I can fool you twice, even though I'm not thinking.
It didn't. It just evolved to be that way. Like there was evolutionary pressure for it to do that. So, I mean, I get that it's just an analogy, but it's a bad analogy because there's actual reasons that the plant evolves that way. It doesn't think about it, and it doesn't like evolve that way by chance. It evolves that way because there's evolutionary pressures on it to evolve that way.
Replica of the female of your species based on your own poor eyesight or failure to understand what situation you're in. As a result, what you have is something without the ability to think, hijacking the mind of the thing that can think to parasitize itself. So if you wanted to take that into the realm of artificial...
Do you think Eric Weinstein has ever accidentally hit on a mannequin in a store?
That's what I was wondering. I was thinking there's got to be some joke in here, and I was like, I couldn't come up with any. But yeah, and not like in that movie Mannequin or whatever.
That this thing is basically just linear algebra, but there we are interacting with it, and we either reward it by telling it it's doing great, or we punish it by moving to another model. And there are only 3 elements necessary for evolution, and they have nothing to do with carbon-based life. You have to have heritability. You have to have variation so that you're not all doing the same strategy. And then you have to have differential success. Now, all 3 of those things take place within programs. Programs are the only place with a reproductive system, the only thing man knows how to build from scratch that has the ability to reproduce. You can build a car. It'll have all the physiological systems of a human being, except for one, it doesn't manufacture more cars. So software is the only place where we can build an analog of the reproductive system, and therefore it's the only place that has room for artificial life.
That's not exactly true because 3D printers exist, and 3D printers can 3D print other 3D printers.
Right, and like also like the way he's talking about this, these are models. These are models that are reliant on a computer of some sort to exist. Like this isn't. They're not self-replicating because if you smash the computer, they're gone. I mean, I suppose that we're not, then that makes us not self-replicate. Well, no.
Yeah, they're not self-replicating because they can't build another computer.
Right, or they even can't, like, okay, the software copies itself, but like, okay, now, but that doesn't really mean anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not.
I think
you're not creating new life when you copy and paste something into a new folder, like on your fucking computer. Like.
I think he means that AI can write code, but like, first of all, AI written code is trash, and second of all, an AI probably wouldn't be able to write another AI model. Like you can't tell an LLM, hey, can you create another LLM?
Right.
It probably won't be able to do that.
I'm just not buying that this is that what we're able to create in there, like inside, like it's inside the fucking computer trying to get out. In there is anything other like than a model of evolution in some way, shape, or form.
It's a model of a brain more closely than a model of evolution. We've had evolutionary algorithms. They're just extremely slow. But you can model a brain and teach it to mimic humans, mimic the way humans create sentences. You know, if I were to say to you, here's the beginning of a sentence, what's the next word? You can predict the next word because you're a human being. We modeled a computer to be able to do the same thing, to predict the next word that comes after this set of words, which is why it can write code, because we taught it, this is how code looks. This is, the next thing that comes after this thing in a series of code, a series of tokens that represent code. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with this. It can't create new LLMs.
Thinking life that uses the deficits in cognition of thinking life to outsmart thinking life.
So, Avi, let's examine this. I've been thinking when I heard Eric talk about this for the first time, I actually thought of you, a conjecture that I'm going to make. I want you to play upon it. Could Oumuamua be exactly what Eric's just described? Could it be not, an alien artifact, a light sail, a probe based on its weird acceleration and shape? But what if it's a smart, not a smart device, but basically an intelligent device, an object from another civilization, like Eric just described, something that's a simple system, evolving, replicating, spreading across space and time, not to communicate or anything, but could it be fitting the mold that Eric just described? That would explain perhaps why we see it less as a messenger and more as a trickster, or something that could potentially evade the Fermi paradox. It's not really what we think it is.
You're talking about the asteroid?
How would
Yes, I think so.
Is that the one that like passed through our solar system?
I don't know, but he's talking about an asteroid. Yes. Like we don't need to know everything about Oumuamua because it's a fucking rock.
It didn't do anything that asteroids don't normally do. It just floated through space the way that asteroids normally float through space.
And most of them, I guess, don't come that close to Earth, I suppose. But did it turn left? I mean,
it in fact did not.
Yeah, I know. Did it do a loop-de-loo? Like,
how do you react to that as Oumuamua's true nature, as I'm just conjecturing? This is Eric's idea, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. And we know the story about the Trojan horse that was thought to be something else. We know that nature is based on natural selection. So that means that the fittest survives. And one way to be the fittest is to pretend to be something else, so that nobody suspects at what you're actually trying to accomplish. Which
oh, that's right. The fucking aliens, they're like, let's just make our fucking, we're going to do a drive-by on the Earth, but we're going to make our spaceship look like a asteroid.
Look like a regular rock flying through space.
I mean, it's a good way to spy, I suppose.
I'd imagine if you are a spacefaring race of aliens, you have better ways to spy than disguising yourself as an asteroid.
And you have better things to do than spy on Earth.
Like, if you could disguise something to look like an asteroid, why couldn't you just disguise it to look like nothing, empty space, and then just park it right next to the Earth?
But then why would you even do that?
If we ever send a rocket up and it crashes into something that looks like it's not there,
that's the firmament.
Then you could say maybe that's aliens.
It's the dome. What are you talking about? Fucking Earth.
Well,
dome,
God's
man.
an alien, right?
the interaction of AI.
He's not from Earth, so he's an alien.
We would think that there's.
So if God put the firmament there, that's an alien structure.
To figure it out is to get as much data as possible. The more data we have, the better, the less we are impressed by superficial markings. I really.
This is so unsettling the way that it's cut. It's driving me it's driving me mad. I'm just like counting the minutes until we're fucking in red light right now.
And
it would be better if every cut wasn't a fade cut.
Telescope. We have other new telescopes on Earth that if the Rubin Observatory discovers an Oumuamua-like object, we can just put all the resources on it, try to figure out what it means. Our imagination.
Hold on, everybody. We got to look at this rock. Everybody spend billions of dollars to all point everything we have at this rock. Turns out, just a rock.
It's a rock. It appears, best we can tell.
Past. And that is true in our, when you go on a date, the interaction that you have depends on your past dates. If we are confronting something completely new, we are just responding inappropriately because we've never seen something like it.
I think this is a pretty inappropriate response to a rock just flying by the Earth, actually. Yes, we're responding inappropriately. By we, you mean you. And I think Eric thinks that it might be a space. Well, it is a space rock. Now I'm fucking confused. Now I'm saying dumb shit. Eric thought it was a space rock. Well, that's actually what it was. That's not what it was.
There are, in fact, lots of rocks in space, and sometimes they pass through our solar system.
And, the academia would be the first to always make analogies.
Man, why didn't they say it was Planet X or Nibiru or whatever? Why the fuck? Like, come on. That's way more fun, guys. Say that it's Nibiru.
a dark comet and say that it's a rock of a type that we've never seen before, but it's still a rock. And discuss anything else. That is human nature, to assume that, to interpret everything in terms of the narratives of the story that you already have.
Why would we think it was a rock of a type we've never seen before, though? It just looked like a regular rock.
But the only thing is
the kind of rock that's made out of rock.
Right. I think it might be that's just a rock that we've never seen before, but not a type of rock we've never seen before. We're like, oh shit, that's the first time I saw that rock. Like, I guess.
I mean, I guess it was like a type of rock we've never seen before, in that it was extrasolar and passing through our solar system, and we've never seen that before.
Doesn't mean
But,
it
like,
hasn't happened. It just means we couldn't see it.
At that point, you could say, like, that rock is a type of rock I've never seen before because it's oriented in exactly that way.
Right. Every
Like,
rock.
oh, is that unusual for a rock? No, that's very usual for a rock. It's just doing rock things. It's doing rock things that aren't exactly like any other rock thing that I've ever seen before. Therefore, it's a brand new type of rock.
Right. And by this standard, any rock that you've never seen is brand new.
Yes, brand new type of rock.
A pebble on the street is a brand new type of rock.
Brand new.
You just discovered it.
Everybody stop what you're doing. We all need to look at this pebble.
I found it because it got stuck in my shoe.
The people who are curious are the ones that will learn something. And so I think science offers us this opportunity of learning something new.
But like, in a way, we kind of did that. We kind of like stopped everything and we're like, hey, this thing is flying through our solar system. We've never seen it before. Let's all like look at it and figure it out. And then we all looked at it and we're like, oh yeah, it's just a rock. And like, basically the entire scientific community was like, okay, neat. And then these three guys are like, yeah, but we should look at it more in case it's not really a rock. I know it looks like a rock and it's acting like a rock and, it's made out of rock.
And every other rock that we've ever seen was just, well, not like this rock, I suppose, but every other rock we've seen, we think was probably just a rock.
What if this rock is not really a rock, but a spaceship shaped like a rock?
Drunk aliens.
There's just some alien like, hey guys, watch this. I'm going to throw this rock and those monkeys over there are going to think it's weird.
Oh, I was thinking it was more like they're just flying around. They're like, oh shit, got to fly by fucking Earth again. Turn the spaceship into a rock. We're not supposed to be over here, so.
And collect data and put money into the effort. We can't just assume the data will fall into our lap. We have to invest time and money. And so instead of putting money into things that
they're still talking about the fucking asteroid or the fucking meteor or whatever the fuck it is.
$1 billion towards a future telescope that will measure the power spectrum of density fluctuations of dark matter to the next decimal point.
Okay, I have to cut you off there. You're encroaching on how the bread is buttered in the Keating household. I will not allow you to cut off funding for the Simon's Observer.
No, but I mean, the amount of new information that you get is relatively marginal. And obviously it's a safe territory because you know what you will find. The one thing I realized when getting funded by NASA was that they were asking, what will I discover in year one when I applied to grants? That's an oxymoron to say, I'll give you the money as long as you tell me what you will discover in the
Now, you forgot what Isidore Rabbi said. He said, never apply for something that you haven't already accomplished.
Yes, exactly. That's the approach.
No, dude, like this is like where this is. I bet it's like a thing where you're like most of the way there, but you need money to get yourself over the top so that you can buy a piece of equipment or rent a piece of equipment or use a piece of equipment or travel somewhere to use somebody. You know what I'm saying? There's like, these are like so yeah, if you apply for a grant, you're like, I am, 85% of the way done with this, what's a who's it thing. And, now I need some funding to get finished and I have a grant and I hope to find X, Y, and Z. Yeah, absolutely. You don't just be like, hey, I'm a fucking science and give me a science money, which is what Eric thinks that should be going on. I think I'm going to look,
Yeah.
we're going to find out, whether or not that rock is a spaceship.
Imagine like, they're talking about dark matter here, which we should be spending money trying to understand dark matter, because if we can understand it, it could give us new technologies that could unlock new possibilities for the human race. In kind of the same way that electricity did. I mean, electricity is pretty obvious. You know, we didn't need to discover it because you just look at lightning and you're like, oh yeah, that's powerful. But like, there also wasn't really a complete understanding of like what we could do with electricity just by looking at lightning. You know, we invented all sorts of amazing things using electricity once we could actually like harness it and, you know, unlock its potential. And now I'm talking to you, even though we're like 500 miles away, and like people are watching us, even though they're all over the earth, and it's all done through the power of electricity. You know, who knows what dark matter could unlock if we could figure it out and how to control and harness it.
Or I don't know. My understanding actually is that it's a placeholder. Dark matter and dark energy are like placeholders for things that are theorized to possibly somehow exist or be applying force on other things, but that there's no real indication as to what it is or if it even exists in the way that we believe that things exist. If that makes sense, that's my understanding.
Yeah. We basically,
but I'm not a
see
science
its
educator.
effects on other things. We don't see it directly, hence the term dark.
All right, well, guess what? We can get away from this. Get away from this jump cut fucking asteroid as spaceship fucking cringe fest. My God, Eric Weinstein is obnoxious, but I think that Avi Loeb guy is giving him a run for his money. That guy's fucking obnoxious too.
We should title this episode, "Is that a rock or is that a spaceship?"
I think that's exactly what if I can remember to call it that, I'll call it, is that a rock or a spaceship with Eric and Avi? Like, oh my God. All right. Whatever. That was fucking stupid. I need a drink. HK, you want to read the show out?
Yeah. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific right here on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you'd like to support us, you can find out how to support us through our different channels on echoplexmedia.com. You can find information about all our other shows. If you're listening live, stick around after the song. We're going to change the color of the lights and the contents of our drinks. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you for tuning in. And if you get a chance, try us live. All right, now here is Boomers by Periscope.